Good morning. Time's now ready for our meeting. We've got a quorum. And we'll begin our meeting. In 2025, for the electrical term, up to the last meeting, we have already approved 4 projects with a total funding allocated of $45 billion. On the agenda today, there are 3 papers for discussion. All of them are newly submitted by the administration for funding approval, and together they involve an amount of $7.23 billion. And all the funding proposals, should they be approved, the number of approved projects was number 7, with a total funding allocation of $53.3 billion. Excluding land resumption and computerization projects, which cost $27 billion, the public works involve a budget of $25.6 billion. Let me remind members that if members on today's discussion, if you have any direct or indirect monetary interests, please, according to the rules and procedures, Section 83A, before you speak, declare your interest. And I also like to remind members to note that Section 84 of our rules and procedures, with direct pecuniary interest, there are rules for in relation to your vote. The first item is PWSC 2024-2521.
521文件係建議把
This is a proposal to upgrade part of project 786CL as 898CL to category A, has an estimated cost of $4.7581 billion in money of the day prices. The development panel was consulted at its meeting held on the 26th of November 2024. The panel supports the administration's plan to submit the proposal to the PWSC and asks that it be expedited. And the relevant notes of this discussion has been forwarded to members for email. And I won't introduce the attending officials one by one. I welcome them all to our meeting. Members, if you wish to ask questions, well, there are 6 actually. Dr. Lu Wai Kong, Mr. Chen Yuen Ming, Mr. Chan Xiu Hong, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Lam Chun Sing, and Mr. Chan Hock Fong, 4 minutes each. Dr. Lu Wai Kong. Thank you, Chairman. I wish to speak in favor of the Tung New Town Extension project. And now they're applying for funding approval in respect of the second phase of site formation and infrastructure work at a cost of $4.7581 billion. We know that Tung New Town Extension is a development close to the airport. It will bring about a lot of benefits. Hong Kong's international airport is now running on a free runway system. And in the future, we'll have an airport metropolis. So the development we're talking about is close to the airport. It's just not just for residential purposes. It's also important for airport's commercial activities. And we have actually embarked on the site formation for a few years already. In the first phase, we see some units have already been completed and population intake has begun. And now we are talking about another stage, second stage, 130 hectares. And also to the west, there will be resumption of land and GIC land. Another 120 hectares of land will be involved. So altogether, we're talking about a total of 250 hectares. So I support the project, and at the same time, I want to make sure that the pace of development is as best as possible to tie in with the population intake. Well, it's a scenic site, actually. So perhaps I would like to invite the administration to tell us more about the natural environment in Tung West and how they would be preserving the beautiful natural environment. So I want to expedite the project, and I support the project. Permanent Secretary, it seems that people are moving in this year. Thank you for your support, Dr. Low. As Dr. Low has indicated, for Tung West, we want to make sure that development goes hand in hand with natural environmental protection and preservation. The AFSCD has designated the river stream there as an important ecological site. We want to enhance the discharging capacity as well as to improve its aesthetic appeal. Maybe I can invite my colleague from the department to say something about the development at the Tung River Park. Mr. Low. Mr. Ng. We need to beautify two of the sites there. First, we need to make sure that it has the necessary capacity for storm water discharge. We already make use of some box covers in the first stage to improve the stormwater discharging capacity in the east. And now in this stage, we are going to do the same in the eastern part of the Tung River Park. And we are also mindful that some pollutants may get discharged into the river. And now we will use some sustainable building material so that the inflow of water will be slower, so as to prevent pollutants from getting into the river stream. And also for some part of Tung, there's no proper sewerage system. So some pollutants may get into the river, Tung River. In order to improve the water quality, we would do some proper sewerage system development for some of the villages. So apart from enhancing the drainage function, we also want to protect the water quality and the natural ecology there. Well, members may wish to refer to the paper concerning the stormwater treatment and also the water quality resulting from surface runoff. Ms. Chan Yue-ming, I support the project. I want to make 2 points about the project itself. This time, 8 villages will benefit from the construction of a village sewerage system. And so the rural area will benefit from the enhanced infrastructure. At this time, we are going to say goodbye to the septic tank system for these villages. This is really commendable. And also the project will involve some road closure to the south of Tung. According to paragraph 13, there will be roads at Shepman Carp, and altogether 6 villages will be involved in the road improvement works. I want to know whether any closed area roads will be involved. There will be a recreational corridor with ecological value. And I would like to know how can the works of improve the accessibility for residents and for coaches to access the closed area. And will this project involve the review of the closed area? And also I want to say something about the cycle path. A number of cycle paths and also the promenade and other sports facility will be involved. This is about developing Tung into a dynamic and livelihood area. The Financial Secretary has talked about the need to take forward strategic infrastructure projects in Hong Kong. For this particular project, the cycle path and related infrastructure projects are not really big in scale, but my question is really whether they will be funded through the issuing of bonds. Well, the second question is really rather broad in policy. So Ms. Ho, Permanent Secretary, please briefly respond to that, because this meeting is really about the proposal to carry out the project. Thank you, Ms. Chen, for your support. As regards the question on bonds, I would make some response, and then for the others, I would defer to my colleague from the departments. The Financial Secretary has said that in order to develop the northern metropolis, the government is prepared to issue bonds with a longer tenure, so as to support some projects in the capital works project. There's an internal committee in the government to look into what infrastructure projects should be funded through bond issuance. And I do not rule out this particular project that we're talking about will be funded in this way. But the committee works in a transparent manner. They would issue annual reports on the projects that will be funded by government bonds. Mr. Wu. We are now constructing new roads. They are not really related to closed area roads. The member also referred to the South Lantau, and of course that and the arrangements there. Tung would need to tie in with access road for connectivity. We have been given some opinion to have more landing or the loading points, such as not just at Yuen Long, but also at South Lantau. We have already constructed 12.1 km of a cycle path. And there will be more for the second stage, connecting Tung east and west, such as the battery there. We have cycle paths that would improve connectivity for visitors going to that spot. And also the cycle park will be provided with some parking spaces. Some of them are for coaches, because at present Tung is suffering from insufficient parking spaces. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, for the cost is 4.75 million plus, and we have Tung West and Tung East, and the project will cover different sites in different locations. For this stage of development in Tung, well, I would say that in principle we should give our support. And I also want to commend the administration for adopting a good approach in coming up with comparison cost timetable in enclosure 5, so that members can get some idea as to whether the proposed estimated cost is reasonable, or if they are not really comparable to other projects, the reasons why. And in paragraph 8, it is said that the tendering for the majority, the major projects have been completed. There are so many work sites to be covered in Tung West and Tung East. How many projects are you, or how many tenders are you going to award? Of course, if you want to have synergy, you would award a big tender to cover various projects. But in that case, smaller companies may not be able to participate. So I want to get some further information from the administration. And there will be a bridge for both pedestrians and bicycles. We have done this for other projects. Well, I've been approached by some people that if the gradient of the cycle path is not appropriate, then some cyclists may wish to go down and in a high speed, and that would cause problems. On the question of trees, such as some banyan trees, you are going to retain one of those, but not the other two. Is it because of the exorbitant cost if we were to keep them?
Thank you. Ms. Ho, Permanent Secretary. Thank you, members, for your support. There are 3 questions. And for the second and third question, I'll ask Mr. Wu to answer. For question 1, we're asking for this funding of $4.7 billion, which are for 5 contracts. Of the 5 contracts, 4 of them have been tendered out. And they are reflected in our estimate of $4.7 billion. For another contract that has not invited tenders, it's mainly to do with articulation with an MTR project. So we have to wait a bit before we invite tenders. As members said, how do we decide on the number of contracts? There are a basket of factors. We want to have more competition. not just inviting tenders from large ones, but also smaller size contractors. And also for synergy effect, we want to have a balance of all factors concerned. Permanent Secretary, can you explain to us what are the 4 contracts involved? How do you decide on divide the contracts? I'll ask Mr. Wu to respond. Thank you, Mr. Wu. Thank you, member, for your concern. The 4 contracts, one is on the 2 pedestrian bridges with the noise barriers because they are in adjacent locations. And the second contract is on the open space, including the building of a cycling park. There are 2 other contracts in Tung West about some pipes. So there are 2 contracts for TC West, so that smaller size contractors can take part in the tendering process. And there's one more contract which has not been given tenders. We need to see when is the better time to activate that particular tendering process. And also Mr. Chen's other questions about trees. The tree you mentioned is near Shat Boon Cap. We explained it in Enclosure 7. We need to build a road, and because of the presence of the tree there, we wonder whether we can reposition the road to avoid hurting the tree. Next to it is a conservation area. We have consulted villagers and other people's opinions, and we felt that we need to remove the tree. Another consideration, because the tree is located on a slope, so if we transplant it, its chances of survival is not high. So after listening to experts, we've come up with this latest proposal. Member also talk about the ramp in the cycling park. We're aware of that, your concern. So in our design, we will try to reduce the gradient of the ramp. We'll try to avoid on the same ramp people can cycle up and down. So that's what we'll bear in mind in the designing. Thank you. Next one, Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chairman. I think this project costing more than $4.7 billion involves 3 large areas. It's quite a lot for us to digest. At the relevant development panel, I've said that I understand the complexity and the challenge involved, but certain parts of it, since all the areas are bundled together, so there may not be enough elaborations on the works needed. But on Tung Park and the waterfront cycling park, I have some questions. For the Tung Park, about the overall cost. In terms of the cost, I want to know, well, there's a budget of $500 million. And does that amount, well, as mentioned in paragraphs 17 to 20, I just want to mention that all these paragraphs cover the cost details, right? If my understanding is correct, then firstly, Tung Park, unlike other urban parks, often we tend to focus on help the public enjoy the waterfront, and reduce the danger. But for the Tung River, all along, well, we know that it is a place of much ecological value. Or the Tung stream, the director talked about improving water quality, preventing floods, and so forth. But in terms of the ecological environment there and the riverbank, the actual design there are closely related. But in the paper, are not details on how you're going to design the park. Before I approve the funding request, people may ask me, actually, now you've approved a budget, how would it affect the Tung Chung Park? And yet it seems I can't give them an answer from the paper. So can you give me more ideas about the details of your design and about the adjustment of water level? And secondly, for the cycling park, I asked the same question last time. You said that last time the cycle track is mainly for people living in the area. But as I said, if you expect to serve the people living there and yet you put 60 parking spaces, I have doubts about that. Having 60 parking spaces there and then to add a road there as well, even though you said that it would not lead to road congestion, from my perspective, that means it won't be attract people from outside to come in. If it's attractive, then people from other urban areas, knowing the beautiful area environment, then people may come in, and the 60 car parking spaces could result in problems. So that's still what I'm worried about. So I'd like to hear from you again. Have you considered again the arrangement? Ms. Ho, Permanent Secretary, thank you for the two questions from you. On the cycling park, I will answer that, and then Mr. Wu would give you more information on the design for the Tung Chung River Park. Well, actually, on the paper itself, and also the information in the enclosures of the paper, the maps, the plans, we have actually incorporated member suggestions at the last panel meeting. So we have expanded the content of the plans. We've also included more images to help members imagine how the future works would look like. As for the cycling park, in the rural outlying islands, there isn't any cycling park. So in the future, Tung Chung East, Area 147, the cycling park would serve not just people living in Tung Chung, but also can serve people living in outlying islands. We expect the Tung Chung residents in the future, they will cycle on their own to the park. So therefore, we won't need to prepare car parking spaces for Tung Chung residents. But in order to attract people from outside of Tung Chung, people living on outlying islands to come, as members have noticed, because this is a cycling park with 60 car parking spaces, that's because we know that we expect that some people may drive there. But we don't believe that that will be the only way people can get to the park. Therefore, in terms of the number of car parking spaces, there's a limit. And we've also seen that besides the cycling park with car parking spaces, in Siu Ho Wan Depot station there will be a mall there with its own car parking spaces. So I think that would help. So now I'll hand over the time to Mr. Wu. Thank you. I'll give you more details on the Tung Chung Park. Member is right. As mentioned in the paper, the recreational facilities and greenery, the unit cost of that involves other open space, including the cycling park. For Tung Chung River Park itself, our estimate is about $100 million at month of day price. By September 2024, the cost will be $94 million. The unit cost is about $33 million. The unit cost is $3,300. The phase one of Tung Chung River Park is $9,000. And in the Kai-Tak plan, the facilities there, the unit cost is $40,300. So it depends on the number of structures within the park. So in this case, there are fewer structures, and members are also concerned about how we can protect the water quality in Tung River. Well,
東中河嘅
Well, we're not going to touch the river bed, and there are certain requirements during the construction. So we need to make some preparation. We'll put in some concrete blocks to segregate the river and the construction area. And as for the polluted runoff, it will be treated and discharged at designated discharge points of the site. And those discharge points will be designated by the EPD. As for the control of the water levels, well, Tung Chung River Park would allow the visitors to get close to the water body. So when the water level reaches a certain level, the management staff, the working staff there will sound an alarm and alert the visitors to leave the site. Well, there are a lot of diagrams to illustrate what will happen to Tung Chung River Park. This is very important for the ecological preservation and also for safety. In the past, we'll have the water bodies complemented by some trees and plants. And people then ask for more variety of plants. And the overall impression the plants conveyed to visitors. And some people would like to see more variety of plants. Some people would say that in a small place, in a small park, too many varieties may mean that the visual impact is diminished. So some people would like to see more of some of the plant species, to create a bigger impact. But then some other people want to have more varieties so that you have blossoming flowers in different seasons. So that there are two different views about this. Thank you for giving me time to explain to members what we are going to do to Tung Chung River. Well, it has a high ecological value. And we would be disseminating information there on the ecology there, and there will be guided tours in the future, leading visitors to the Tung Chung River site and explain the ecological value. And we will have some plants to support the butterfly habitat project there. And we have the various plants. And some shops. In view of their ecological value. But at the waterfront, we would Well, we would consider the recreational aspect so that they would see, visitors would see different flowers in different seasons and give people a good experience. Mr. Lam Chan-sing, I support this project because this will tie in with the development of the airport city, and there are many people working at the airport living in Tung, both Tung western and eastern part of Tung. And I would like to see the completion of the MTR station earlier. Well, you have entrusted some of the projects to MTR. I would like to know the difference between entrusted projects and government projects. Is it because of the lower cost? Perhaps you entrust these projects to MTRCL because of the lower cost? And at the earliest, 2029, we see a population of 100,000 people or so. But some of the facility will only be completed in 2030, 2031. There will be a gap between the population intake and the availability of facilities. So you need to make sure that the construction completion dates are met. What if the MTRCL fails to complete on time? Are there mechanisms to monitor their work progress? As for the Ying Tong Road, Ying Hei Road, Road Junction, and Hoi Pan Road and Yi Tong Road, you are going to build a bridge system with a cycle track and also a footbridge, so that there is no need to have signals crossing, thus facilitating road traffic. The cost is some 600 or more than $600 million. Is the vehicular traffic so heavy that there is a need to have bridges for bicycles and pedestrians? So is the $600 million a worthy cost? Yes, some comparison with unit cost. For example, some of the facilities at the park have been compared with the North Point theme park. And you said it's comparable. The North Point East Park had a cost of some $900 million when it was tendered, and now the contractor withdrew because of some problem. So ultimately, it will only cost $700 million. So if you compare this with the new cost, of course, it's much cheaper. Ms. Ho, Permanent Secretary, thank you for your support. Mr. Lam, I will ask Mr. Wu to handle the second and third question. We have to entrust some of the projects to the MTRCL. Those projects are located within the work site of the Tung Extension 9. So there's an interface issue here. We believe it would be better if we entrust those projects to MTRCL. But I have to stress that this only accounts for a very small portion. If you look at paragraph 21, we set out the projects. Some 430 meters long of road a lift and a part of the promenade. So it would only account for a small portion of the funding requests for this proposal. And they have to charge something for doing this. We estimate that it will be at 16.5%, but we'll discuss with the MTRCL to compress the project management fee charged by MTRCL. Mr. Wu, on the two junctions mentioned by the member, they are very busy now. In 2025, when we start to see population intake, the two public housing estates would take in 30,000 people. At the end of everything, we are going to see a population of 150,000. According to our survey, we need to have bridges spanning these junctions to separate vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic. So it's approaching saturation point. So we need to do these bridges to avoid problems. In Enclosure 5, you can see that the unit cost is 8,900 at September 2024 prices. And we have compared this project with some other park projects. You can see that the lowest is the 83,000. It's a park at Anderson, the former Anderson Quarry site. And the 24,000 cost is related to the Chung cost, which has to do with the amount of structures to be constructed. How about waterfront? The director has talked about some unit costs. I noticed that they have compared the East North Point waterfront park. The cost was originally 90,000. Now with a new contractor, it's 70,000. It goes to prove that sometimes there's a room to further reduce the cost. If you compare yourself with the East North Point waterfront park, it would be more reasonable. The East North Point waterfront park is one of those we have made reference to. It's within the upper and lower limits of the unit costs of Tung projects. I think, Chairman, the member says whether we are making reference to the estimated cost of 90,000 or 70,000. But if our colleagues do not have such information at hand, maybe we can supplement with a written reply later. And it's also said that the government can tie in with the population intake when it comes to the completion of the relevant infrastructure. Mr. Chan Hok-fung, generally speaking, I support the project because there will be a lot of public housing estates to be constructed on reclaimed land near Yuen Long estate. The supporting infrastructure is not progressing fast enough. We are concerned about bus service, the provision of markets, and municipal services. I hope the departments would coordinate work among different departments so that the residents will not be living in an area like a frontier town with little utilities and transport services. Near Yuen Court, well, there is a footbridge. But the footbridge systems are fragmented. There's a very well-developed footbridge to the station for Yuen Court. But at the new claimed area, you adopt a different design. People have to access the future Tung East station at Gray. There's no comprehensive footbridge system for the entire Tung to separate vehicular traffic from pedestrian traffic. There are more than 100,000 people in the future. If you don't do anything about this, congestion is going to happen. Would you do something about the land lease? You should ask the project owner to prepare for some connection points in their projects so that in the future you may consider doing connecting the different bridges together. For example, Shingmun Kap, you're going to do some sewerage system for the villages such as Shingmun Kap, etc. Are you going to provide the connection point at the entry point of the villages, and then the villagers would have to pay for the connection to their houses? How much are you expecting them to pay? You're going to build some drainage, dam, and etc. You're talking about the need to resume private land. And you have to make sure that you do not just reclaim land that you need. And then there are some unreclaimed land at a lower elevation, which will be flood-prone in the future. So I hope you would resume all those as well to prevent future disputes. There will be different service needs in the future in Tung Chung, but the Social Welfare Department has not yet been able to offer attendance for NGOs to provide service. Perhaps you can use some containers to act as temporary offices for these social welfare agencies. Because while people are moving in, the services will only be available in 2 or 3 years' time.
Ms. Ho, thank you for your support. Mr. Wu can answer later question 2 on how to help villages have connectivity with the sewage systems. And your question on Tung Chung East, the new reclamation area, pedestrian connectivity. I understand your point. You can imagine people coming out of the MTR station, and we do hope that the pedestrians can have a better environment for them to walk to the destinations. And in the new reclamation area in Tung Chung, is design emphasizes that they prefer pedestrians to walk at grade level. So we hope that on ground level, we would provide shops to attract the pedestrians to walk on ground level before they go to the waterfront. And internally, we are studying how we can let people going from Tung Chung East have an all-weather route that is convenient for pedestrians. It doesn't have to be a very giant bridge, but we do totally agree that there should be good connectivity for pedestrians. If needed, for some land to be sold, we can add clauses in the land lease. And now you talk about land acquisition, particularly for the construction of needed facilities, because for the future, the Chung River, for the sake of enjoying the Chung River, you know our process for land acquisition, we have to actually only approve new structures which are necessary for the project. So I'm sure we will have the land acquisition needed to build the facility to connect people with the river. And Mr. Wu later on can also explain more about the situation of the Chung River. And you talk about after we form new land, when the long-term use is not finalized, is there room for us to, on the basis of short-term tenancy, rent out the site to NGOs for the holding of welfare activities or public activities? We will consider that. Mr. Wu, we actually have done a serious study on at which water level there should be the necessary facilities to be built. The people there have told us about their preference. So as for the location of the necessary facilities at sites where there's a risk of flooding, we will build the preventive structures to prevent the possibility of flooding. That is in relation to the building or the need for polders. That is. We'll also have a septic tank built in villages to help villagers connect with the sewage system. In terms of the fee per cubic meter is $2.9. For each household, the usual charge is for each 4 months, the first 1.2 cubic meters is free. For a household of 4 people, the usual cost is $450 per year. That is $150 per quarter, roughly. And there's also the estimate that right now, for villagers disposing of their sewage, the cost is about $500 a year. So the government charge of sewage fee and the current system, the cost of the current system is about the same. Both costs are about the same. Next one, Mr. Tang Fei. I support this funding proposal because we have been expecting the population in Chung to increase. I've got 2 questions. The first is, well, the paper talks about various kinds of work like site formation and so forth. For phase 1 work, by 2028, about 175,000 people would be there. So have you reserved land for the building of schools? We only know of 1 primary school there, which is under construction. But if you have an additional population of 175,000, then there will be families. I'm sure there will be families and small children among them, quite a number of them, sizable population. So if there's only 1 primary school, would that be enough? I'm in Tung right now. Well, schools there normally have a full. So there are not many vacant places in the schools in Tung. So have you reserved any land for the building of schools? And also in paragraph 30 of the paper, footnote 23 mentions a NEC. Footnote 23 says that the contract actually would actually provide for the price adjustment. So I know that there will be fluctuations in prices, a fluctuation of about 10%, right? And in today's inflationary world, the chances of prices coming down are low. But how high will prices go up by? So should there be disputes or discussions about prices, then how would this clause, what kind of role would this clause play? And for this, a new construction contract only covers phase 2, is it? Does it have anything to do with phase 3, phase 4? Why is that the case? Ms. Ho, thank you for your support. Your 2 questions. And Mr. Wu could give you more details on the new project contract. And as for the land for schools, the Education Bureau has planned for a primary school near Yuen Long Estate, which will be completed in 2028-2029. And next to this primary school, there is land reserved for the building of a secondary school. It's under planning. Besides that, in Tung East, in the reclaimed site, we have reserved quite a sizable space for other primary secondary schools. Mr. Wu can explain to you about the NEC, and after that, Mr. Kwong could give you more information on the land reserved for schools. So Mr. Wu first. Mr. Wu? For NEC, basically, it applies to all public works, not just for phase 2. But this is just to highlight to you what it is, its characteristics. As mentioned in the footnote, it emphasizes cooperation, mutual trust, and collaborative risk management between contracting parties. Let me give you an example. Say once we've issued a contract asking the contractor to finish the project at a designated price, regardless of the weather or chances of typhoons or large boulders and so forth. All the risks are to be shouldered by the contractor. So what it means is the contractor, when submitting the tender, they would raise the price to afford for the risks. And now this NEC contract form provides a mechanism for the contractual period. Prices can be adjusted in light of the actual situations. Next one is Mr. Kwong. Walter Kwong? Yes, when we did the planning for Chung, we look at the population projection and reserve land consequently for schools. As mentioned by the PS in Area 89, besides the primary and secondary school near Yuen Long Estate, in Tung East there will be 2 more secondary schools and 6 more primary schools to be built. And there will also be kindergartens and higher education institutions under planning. But the timetable will depend on the changes in populations. Next one is Benson Look. Thank you, Chairman. I've noticed that in paragraph 21 and 22 of the paper, in this latest project, part of it is commissioned to the MTRCL. And for the relevant projects, they are adjacent to the work sites of the Tung line extension, so I'm sure there'll be a synergy. I'm sure you all know that the government is the biggest shareholder of the MTRCL, and I've noticed that even though the budget involved in the commission project for MTRC is not big, it's just about $13 million. But if you are entrusting the MTRCL to carry out works, the management and monitoring costs cannot exceed 16.5. There's a ceiling. So you're discussing with MTRCL to compress the costs involved for the project. So I'd like to ask the administration, if you are to compress the expenditure, Then, besides from cutting down the cost for design and materials, can you also ask the MTRCL to make less profits so that we now at a time of deficit we can save more? So I just want to know what are your ways to try to compress the cost, Ms. Ho, PS. I'll try to answer it, and Mr. Wu can supplement later. As mentioned by the member, the 16.5%. This cost management fee is an upper limit. The government is obliged to discuss with MTRCL, and our goal is to further reduce 16.5 to a lesser percent.
We'll ask the MTRCL to tell us the management work and the expenses that the MTRCL will have to incur. So they will submit a proposal to the CDD for agreement. And CDD would look at the cost proposal and compare it with similar projects. I defer to Mr. Wu, the director, for more details. I've already mentioned how this is done with some examples here. For example, we have entrusted MTRCL to construct a berthing jetty for boats, and also there's another entrusted project to the MTRCL. But at that time, the management fee was similarly pegged at 16.5%. So we asked the MTRCL to indicate the cost, and our colleague from the Highways Department and the Railways Development Office would assess whether it's reasonable. Yes, you must pay attention to the actual reality. We have a big deficit here. This is the maximum, the cap, not the exact management fee to be paid. It must be justified. Miss Doreen Kwong. Two questions here. First, about the footbridge. It would take up $600 million among the $4.7 billion. I hope you will not just go for footbridges solely because you mentioned footbridges, because many experts here and abroad have looked at how different footbridges are vis-a-vis at grade crossings. They also look at social impacts apart from the capacity for pedestrians. What are you connecting to the footbridges? I don't live in Tung. I have tried to understand the connection points. What community facilities are connected to these bridges? And if the footbridges are not constructed, will the access be very inconvenient, or will they become inaccessible? You talk about high capacity. The vehicular traffic is busy. There are already some congestion already, but we need the figures. What is the vehicular traffic volume be when we need to consider building a footbridge? Please tell us your criteria. We're more than 1,000 footbridges in new towns. The majority are in the NT. Have you considered the social impact arising from these footbridges? Mr. Chairman, I have another question about open space. According to paragraph 3, open space would take up 1.6 billion out of $4.7 billion. If I'm wrong, please let me know. And there are 46 hectares to be provided. There will be private residential developments there, and they will provide their own open space for recreational purposes. Why do you need 6.7 hectares of open space? You know, Victoria Park is just 19 hectares of land. And here, for this particular project, you will provide 6.7 hectares. Please tell us why. Permanent Secretary, I have to ask Mr. Wu to supplement, but I would venture some response here. If you look at the location of footbridges, please turn to enclosure 3, page 2. And you can see that the location. You can see the locations on both sides of the footbridge system. It's within a residential area, and there are schools in the vicinity. So that we are going to see a lot of people going from one side to the other. So a footbridge system can improve connectivity. The member asked for the adoption of a statistic-based assessment. This is of course correct. With more and more people moving to Chung at Ying Hei Road and Hoi Tung Road, there will be more and more people. There are pedestrian crossings at present, but in the future, a few years down the road, if we maintain these crossings, there will be adverse implications for road traffic. That's why we propose the pedestrian bridge to improve connectivity. Mr. Wu perhaps can tell members in detail the findings of the TIA. On open space, yes, the member is correct that the projects related to the cycle track, the open space, and the total cost is $1.6 billion. For this new extension of Tung New Town, we're going to see additionally 180,000 people moving in. With such a higher population, we need to adhere to the standards in respect of per capita open space to be provided. So for the second stage of the project, $1.6 billion will provide 12 hectares of open space to comply with the requirements in the Hong Kong Planning Standard and Guidelines. Mr. Wu, it's mentioned about the connections to be provided. The whole system would need to be connected with something. Please explain the benefits of all these connection points. You mean the connectivity for the pedestrian bridge? We have mentioned that in the future we'll see a better segregation of vehicular traffic and pedestrian flow. And for connectivity, it's also better. To the south of the footbridge, there are many new residential developments. And in the Tung reclamation area. There will be a waterfront promenade. If we have a properly constructed footbridge, we can take people from north to south of the area, taking people to and from the promenade. And in the future, the residents will enjoy a better lifestyle. There will be more recreational possibilities for future residents. And the member also asked about the social impact of such bridges. I would say that the implications would be that they are beneficial. With regard to the members' questions, I would like to say that there was a previous transport impact assessment, which is comprehensive study. And it indicates that by 2029, for the two road junctions in question, the remaining capacity will decrease to under 15%. And according to the Transport Department's criteria, it means that the road junction will suffer from congestion during busy hours. And in 2029, and in the 2031 or 2036, the capacity will be exceeded. The traffic capacity will be exceeded. And according to TIA, if we build footbridges and cancel the road crossings, then by 2030, the reserve capacity will be more than 15%. So that points to an urgent need to build the two bridges in question. And the member also asked questions about the places or facilities that will be connected through the two bridges. In the vicinity of these two bridges, they would provide access to private housing developments such as coastal skylines, Seaview Crescent, and Caribbean Coast, and other facilities such as shoppings, malls, and the primary and secondary schools there. Mr. Luk Chung Hong, I support this project for Tung Chung New Town Extension. I would like to ask whether the Bureau has considered the following issues. The Tung Chung River Park is a very good example of habitat revitalization program. But the water level is not very consistent. During dry season, the water level is very low. If you want to attract visitors and make it a tourist attraction, you need to make sure that the water body is good. Would you consider some water storage facility or to treat effluent discharge from households and discharge them into the river so that the water body is abundant enough? And also for the viewing corridor at the promenade. Well, at the back of that location, there's a site for private residential development. Would you consider adopting a PPP approach in providing the viewing corridor at the promenade so that the developer for the private residential project will be responsible for the viewing corridor as well? Would you consider doing this so that the project is more cost effective? And lastly, a technical issue here, and that's enclosure 3. I noticed that you pay a lot of attention to the need to use low noise road paving material. Are we talking about two different road paving materials? Some new one and some traditional ones? Why are there two different materials?
個問題。
Ms. Ho, the first question about the stability of water in the water park and also the use of materials. Mr. Wu can answer. And as for the viewing gallery, whether we have considered that is in the future, if there are land to be sold for private residential development, will we ask the future developer to build a gallery? And the waterfront viewing gallery, indeed, is actually part of the 5 kilometers of waterfront promenade. It is to be included into public works for design and construction. It can generate synergy effect. And also understand members' thinking that if you were to ask the developer to build it, there could be benefits, but in today's market situation, I think for developers investing in residential plots, they would not be inclined towards building other facilities. So considering the current circumstances, I think that it is more appropriate to incorporate that into the public works project. Mr. Wu, as for the low noise road surfacing material in Annex 3 of the paper, it stated that there are different types of colors used because some are already being used to distinguish between various kinds of materials. As for the water source in the Chung River, with urbanization, in the past, some storm water may have seeped into the soil, and with extension of the new town and the new lands formed, concrete is used, and there's a drainage system installed. In the future, we expect the Chung River to have to withstand more drained waters. So there could be tanks built to actually reduce the speed of the water flow and also allow for more sedimentations. When it is raining very, very heavily, the tanks can be used for temporary storage of rainwater and to control the water flow into Tung River. Next one is Holden Chow. Thank you, Chairman. This project, of course, I believe is important to Tung. I've got questions about details. Can the administration tell us? Footnote 21. For open space, it costs about $1.6 billion. In footnote 21, it mentions the external works, which come at a cost of $860 million for outdoor flooring, pedestrian walkway, fencing, seating, children's play facilities, fitness facilities, landscaping, and so forth. I just want to know, we don't know the breakdown at this moment, the exact breakdown. But for all these items, honestly, they could make up actually more than half of the cost. So can the administration explain to us, how do you come to this cost estimates? Can you give us some breakdown in the future? And secondly, colleagues mentioned it already. Footnote 18 says that the government will entrust the MTRCL to help supervise and manage the project at a cost of 16.5%, maximum limit, that is. Well, it's not something new. Similar practices were made before, but the 16.5%, this upper limit, Can you tell us how confident you are that, well, it's right down in black and white 16.5. Is it possible to have a lower percentage? I hope that by the time the construction works begin, the cost can really be suppressed or compressed. If it's possible to reduce the percentage further, then can you let us know as well? Ms. Ho, PS, please. Well, two questions from member. The first, may I ask Mr. Wu to answer? And for the second one, about 16.5, as you said, this is an upper limit. We would strive to compress it. And we will need to discuss it with MTRCL. They will come back with suggestions on the cost and rationale. We'll evaluate whether their proposals are justified. We will try to reduce the percentage as much as we can. If once we've made a decision, we can inform members or this committee of our decision. Mr. Wu, thank you, Mr. Chow, for your question. As for external works, the footnote mentions what it covers. For the breakdown, we cannot give it to you yet, but we have done some comparisons of unit costs for external works. As mentioned in the footnote, for per cubic meter is about $4,600. We've also compared with the Anderson Road Quarry. The corresponding unit cost is $3,800 per square meters. In Sai Pung, that's a park. The unit cost is $6,800. We have also made comparisons with similar projects. The unit costs are very similar. They differ depending on the number of structures needed. Ultimately, for the breakdown, when do you think you can have it available and can give it to us for reference? Yes, we can provide breakdown to you after the meeting, right? Okay, right after the meeting. Oh, that would be good. And just supplement here. Thank you for your comparisons cited on the basis of per square meters, 3,800, 4,600, and 6,800 for the Sai Pung Park. Well, there are differences nonetheless. If the costs are more similar, it will be better. But if you can give us a breakdown, that will be even better. Okay, Mr. Wu, could you just provide us with those information after the meeting? Next one is Louis Loon. Thank you, Chairman. On this project, at a cost of $4.7 billion, it's quite expensive, but I support it because ultimately, to develop a new town, particularly we are talking about building of a sewage system, open space, and roads. They are necessary. I won't look at the detailed breakdown, but I want to look at the expenditure on roads, which make up 27% of your overall budget, of which, of the $1.3 billion, about half are for the construction of pedestrian bridges, worth $670 million. Why do we need to build so many pedestrian bridges? Because in the new town, in the design of new town, they're not really pedestrian friendly. For each area, it is like separated from others. So you need to link various areas up. Therefore, you need the building of pedestrian bridges. But looking at the urban area, for areas with organic development, they are more pedestrian friendly. Once you're out on the street, at ground level, you can easily reach different destinations. But I'm not discussing how we should design new towns, but I strongly feel that if we can design it in a way which is more human oriented, then for the future residents, they can actually have a stronger feel or sense of community, not having to rely so much on pedestrian bridges. And lastly, in response to the PS's point, that under the current circumstance, developers are unlikely to build more entrusted works like facilities as required by the government. I'd like to comment on it. In the past, yes, in the land lease, the government stated it in it or included clauses asking the developer to build various facilities. The developers are very willing to do that, whether the economic environment is good or bad. Not a problem for them, because they just add it to their overall cost. If they are asked to build various structures, then they will just add to the cost, overall cost. But one big issue is the time frame. When for government works, if one government department or one single government department can carry out all the inspection and checks, that would be good. But often, various government departments are involved in checking and evaluation of projects, and the whole time needed for the completion of a project is extended, and the developer has no idea when they can have the occupation permits. And that's why the development, you may think the developers are unwilling to help or to invest, but if you can provide them with one single window for the whole inspection process, then developers are very willing to help. Yes, thank you for Mr. Leung for giving us another perspective. But I think PS just now was saying that one factor, the main factor, is that they want to tie in with the overall design of the waterfront promenade and to create synergy. So they think that it's better, and from the perspective of public enjoyment, it's better to include the extra structures as part of the public works. Of course, economic environment is one factor, but Mr. Leung mentioned that overall, when the government asks private developers to build public facilities, we should also pay attention to improving the efficiency. There's room really for improvement, so that a project would not be delayed by unnecessary or extra requirements. So that's for your consideration. Mr. Leung also mentioned about pedestrian connectivity. This also involves broader issues. Some pedestrian system is very well connected, and the public enjoy using it. And also, we need to consider the road capacity. Of course, you can create a very wide road at a very huge cost. So we need to strike a balance. P.S. Ms. Ho, what's your view on that? Thank you, Chairman and Member, for your views. I'll just respond to the pedestrian connectivity issue. In planning for a new area, we are paying increased attention to pedestrian connectivity. We are flexible. It's not that we must use pedestrian bridges for connectivity purpose. For this item, while we are building the bridges, there's another reason, which is that ultimately we want to separate the people from the traffic. Of course, while enhancing connectivity. In the Chung East reclamation area, we may not build the bridges for connectivity purpose, because in our planning for the Chung East, our thinking behind is that we want to encourage the public to walk more on ground level, so that it can be more convenient for them to reach the waterfront. And we also encourage them, we want to encourage the people to walk on ground level by actually either in the residential or commercial plots on the ground level. We would make way for the building of more shops so that it will be more attractive to the public to walk on ground floor to reach the waterfront. So we'll actually try to come up with the best design for different places so that there can be a pedestrian-friendly walking environment.
Mr. Lee Chan Kang. I would like to respond to the point made by the director that we need to separate pedestrians from vehicles. This is really good because it would include connectivity, especially for wheelchair-bound people, and also that would ensure smooth traffic, and that would provide additional space for other purposes. The paper talks about the entrusted project by MTRCL. It said that the management fee will be capped at 16.5%, but in paragraph 22, you have already put out a figure, consultancy street. Have you already provided on the $27.8 million in the budget? So they would certainly charge, as you have indicated. Well, and we are going to approve funding of $4.7 billion, and $1.6 billion will be on recreational and open space. And you have the skate parks mentioned. It's an enclosure street. There will be a skate park. The location is further away from the central part of the area. Well, we have a fiscal problem. I know that the skate park might be needed in the future. Could you consider deferring this, or could you go for a simpler design to meet the public demand for such a park? Well, there are two questions. We are going to entrust some projects to the MTRCL, and the question is the management fee to be paid. In the paragraph 22, bracket D, $27.8 million of on-cost payable to the MTRCL. It is the same as saying that it's 16.5%. The actual cost should be lower. How much lower will be subject to further discussion with MTRCL. After we have discussed with the MTRCL, we'll come back to tell members. I understand the need to compress this as far as possible. As for the skate park, well, the observation is correct. The location is further away from Chung's town center. This is because of the nature of skate park. We're talking about cycling activities, some adventure cycling activities. There is an adventure cycling area. Please refer to Note 15 for the relevant activities, such as freestyle BMX, skateboarding, aggressive inline skating, and freestyle scootering. Such activities may generate some noise, so we need to locate the park further away from the town center. So when young people carry out such activities, the nuisance or the noise nuisance cost will be minimized. Otherwise, if it's close to a residential area, we may receive a lot of complaints. So we have to consider the appropriateness of the location. The other point made by the member is whether we should go for more basic facilities. Actually, the design is very basic indeed, because we'll provide some rent for skateboarding. The unit cost is comparable to similar facilities that we built in the past. Mr. Nick C. Lam, I am concerned about projects related to children's playground. We have many playgrounds in Hong Kong with a rather monotonous design. I know there are changes in recent years. For this particular part, are you going to adopt designs that would promote children's physical growth? Because in the past, the design is a safety first approach, which is not very good for children's activities. But first of all, this is a common facility to be used by different age groups, with children with different physical abilities. It also suits young and older children. As for the actual facilities to be provided, I defer to Mr. Wu. I understand there are some water features as well. In our planning, we consulted different stakeholders. In 2022, there was a questionnaire survey. We received some 800 completed questionnaires. The questionnaires about the facilities they like. So first of all, we have the swings and the trampoline and some climbing equipment, and also some water-based activities. We want to make it interesting, dynamic, and so on. So you are going to cater for children of different ages. Well, usually the parents would decide whether certain equipment would be appropriate for their children. Would you provide some indication on the target age groups for different equipment? Well, there are equipment more suitable for middle-aged and elderly citizens. And then next to that, we may have some swings for young children. We want to have a mixture of both. Well, the member would like to have some playground facilities that will facilitate children's growth. I believe the government is aware of that. Ms. Hoi Simon Lee. There will be a skate park. Page 7 says well, it's a very popular skateboard. Skating is very popular. It's an Olympic sport, and there's no cycle park in Tung, so you want to have a cycle cum skate park to meet the demands. Well, I support this proposal, but we need to approve the funding. Therefore, I want to get some data here to consider. First of all, has the administration assessed the utilization of existing skate parks that we have got? According to the paper, there's no such facility or in the outlying islands. Is there a demand That's what I want to know. That must be backed up by data. And you also want to promote urban sport. What happened in the past 2 years on the use of skate parks in promoting urban sport? How many activities have been conducted? And the skate park will be located near the Siu Wan station, and nearby there will be 60 parking spaces, roadside parking, public car parks, etc. No mention is made about the provision of shops and restaurants nearby. So apart from the railway station, which may have some parks or restaurants, but since you are going to allow people to carry out certain sports activities, there will be a need for shops and restaurants. Such provisions will also be good for tourism promotion. And of course, you need to account for a higher population, and you need to provide a cycle track. But what about parking spaces for bicycles? How many are there? 3 questions. In a moment, I would ask my colleagues from the LCSD to give you the data. If they are not available now, we can provide the data after the meeting. First of all, let me offer an observation. The question is about the existing skate parks or the velodrome and the utilization rate. We have some open space near the waterfront promenade, which is not meant for skateboarding. But the design is convenient for skateboarding. So I would say that there's a need, there's a demand. Young people cannot really use regular venues provided by the government, and they have to resort to some informal venue, and that is that they make use of other facilities for skateboarding. Well, I can certainly try to get data on the utilization rate, etc. And the member also mentioned urban sport, and you would like to know figures, data for the past 2 years. I was asked LCSD colleague to indicate whether they have got this. And I also agree with the member that we need to provide shops and restaurants. At Siu Wan, in the future, there will be a residential development, rather the big project there. There will be restaurants and shops within that residential development. I would like to see if LCSD can supplement anything here. Ms. Feng, on the question of utilization rate. Well, for free venues, we may not monitor the utilization like venues that are fee charging. For example, at Lychee Park, you hear the sound from skateboarding whenever you go there. It's a very lively place. As for how many training courses have been organized and how many training activities have been conducted by relevant NSAs, we can certainly try to get some figures. And as for urban sport, we're talking about different sports. I can give you a broad picture of the utilization rate so far. Well, this has to do with the policy, and the questions are really about the facilities to be provided. Well, I support the project, and I understand there's a need to provide the facilities, but data are important. Maybe from the data, we know that demand is so big that the facilities planned here will not be sufficient. We need to know the capacity and the utilization so that we can offer comments. Maybe the level of provision is too small. Yes, this is really a policy question, but we have to focus on the project related to this funding proposal. And of course, you may have some figures or you may have some projection about the utilization. Please provide such information after the meeting. Well, we have spent nearly 2 hours, well, actually 5 minutes shy of 2 hours for the discussion of this item. Members, please indicate whether you have got further questions. 2 more members would like to speak. Dr. Julius Ho and Mr. Chu Kwok Kang. And Mr. Andrew Lam would like to ask questions in the second round. Members who are in attendance, if you wish to ask follow-up questions, please press the button now. And I will ask the government to respond to the questions raised by the room members as far as possible.
Junius Ho, on the new town extension, of course I support it because the sea has been reclaimed, and I have no problem with supporting this project as a matter of principle. But we just want to make sure that the money is properly spent. I've got 3 points here. The first is on the expenditure for the park, which make up $1.6 billion of the $4.7 billion in total. That is 34%. Is a park has to be so expensive? Whatever the kind of cycle park you want to build, but you need to spend the money properly. In the paper, it doesn't give us a detailed breakdown. Besides the footnotes where it says Tung, Chung, East, Open Space and River Park Phase 2 works. But we don't have any more details other than that. I think you may need to give us more information. Say, what are the unit costs of all parks across Hong Kong? In Chung Kwan O, the park was built with $600 million at an area of more than 30,000 square meters, with about 300 parking spaces. Doing some calculations, I asked about the cost of the park and the cost of the car parking spaces. It comes to about $2.9 million of construction costs for each car parking space. I asked, why does it cost so much? We're taking out the cost of the land premium. But why did it cost $2.9 million to build a car park space underground, which is underground? And then I don't know where that item was passed, but I want to know. So you need to give us more details. How did you come to the total of more than $1 billion? It's a lot of money indeed. So don't waste our money. And secondly, the consultancy fee of the $4 billion, item GH. I've seen presentations like this often. $59 million in consultancy fee and remunerations at a work site, $290 million. But we are asking these people to carry out inspections. They together make up 6.9% of the overall cost. And with the entrustment to MTLCL, all these costs come to more than 7% of the total budget. Is it really necessary to hire so many people to do the inspection work at the work sites? We should actually be very, very careful with each penny we spend. And it's been habitual for you to ask us for 10% for contingency expenses. Of course, if there's a need for contingency, of course, I will give you the support. But the 10% reserved for contingency, well, that's a lot of money. Lately, we've said that you need to make improvements and give us interim reports on how you've spent your money. It seems that you follow the same old style in making the funding request. Actually, when this item goes before the Finance Committee, we must be very prudent and carefully consider whether the necessity for such a high cost. P.S. 3 questions from the member. All of them are related to the cost of the works. I think Mr. Wu can tell you more about the consultancy fee and remuneration for on-site workers and contingency fees. As for the open space, I want to comment on it. You wanted to know the unit cost. You can refer to enclosure 5 of the paper, which actually, for this particular works, the 3 types of works projects, including open space, and information is given on the costs involved and the landscaping works as well. For this works, for each square meters is $8,900, compared to projects of similar nature and scale. The cost ranges from $8,300 to $14,000. Our project is not the cheapest, but in comparison with the others, our cost is at the low level. We totally understand that in the current environment, we need to be very careful with every penny we spend. We will emphasize cost control. So, Mr. Wu, could you supplement on the contingency fee and consultancy fee? Mr. Wu, thank you. In enclosure 4, we have given a breakdown on the consultancy fee. So in Tung East and Tung West, they cover a large area, very large area. So we need to have a certain number of on-site workers to ensure the quality of the work done there. We have done comparisons with projects that have come before electrical for bunding, like in Kutong North or Santin, Technopole, and so forth. For consultancy fees and contingency fees that we are asking for now are at similar level as those other projects. For the contingency fees, did you? Of course, you can have. You can make reference to previous projects on the percentage reserved for contingency expenses. Members may disagree. Does it have to be 10%? And you can give us more data about past projects for our reference. Contingency is there not to be used. It is to cover for unknown factors. And it may not necessarily have to be spent, of course. Please understand it. The 10% of contingency fee in the contract doesn't mean that the contractor has to use them all, the 10%. Oh, so that's my understanding. So, Mr. Wu, any more supplements or clarifications? Yes, we need to have the rationale for using the contingency expenses. They are to cope with unexpected situations in the future. For example, in the Tung River Park or Tung River projects, at some shallow level, there are some hard boulders that need to be broken down, and that costs money. The contingency fees are required or have to be used at times. But we actually exercise restraint. What we have reserved now, which is 9%, is less than 10% indeed. But as I said, we need to be very prudent, and we only use those contingency expense when we are fully justified. So maybe PS can supplement. Members are saying that you don't need to stick to the 10% formula. So if you have adequate rationale, or it could be less than 10 or even more than 10. So members just worry whether you really need to follow the usual practice of 10%. You can adjust it. It's just a figure. So members are concerned about that. Yes, agree. Let me clarify. 10% is mainly for situations that's not covered in the contract, including the necessary VOs, variation orders. Otherwise, for contracts like this put before us, our contracts already provide double the amount of security compared to contracts in the private sector. So whether you have come across a big boulders or what, that should be covered by the contractor. I think, Mr. Ho, you've already expressed your viewpoint. I think as a matter of overall principle, maybe Mr. Lau, you could supplement. Thank you for your concern about the contingency fee. Yes, in carrying out public works, as Mr. Wu said, there could be some unforeseen situations, or there could be adjustments made in the process of a construction project. So VOs are common. So all these changes, whether it adds to or reduces the overall cost, have to be catered to. Overall, the contingency fee will meet those unexpected expenses. We always emphasize that we're not going to use all of the contingency fees. We have to use them only when it's needed. And we need to, in the Development Bureau, we have a department monitoring the changes in the overall projects and to see whether the fees are justified. For any changes costing more than $1.4 million, we need to carry out an inspection and checking. And often contingency fees are utilized in various projects, but normally it's less than 10%. And I can give you more information on the average cost after the meeting. Our meeting is supposed to end at 10:30, but I want to deal with this item, so I would extend this meeting to not more than 15 minutes. The next member to speak is Chu Kwok Kang. I agree that Tung Chung New Town development is needed, and there should be more facilities to meet the needs of the residents. But we need to prioritize. For those non-urgent facilities, we can consider putting them on hold. Area 147, the cycle park, and the sports stadium, they are less urgent, particularly since around Tung Chung there is a Northern Park and also a skate park nearby. So that should meet the need. And for the skateboard park, would it overlap with the future function of the plant stadium? And also in the Yinghei Road, the noise barrier. Have you considered the Caribbean coast and nearby schools? They have already designed to mitigate the noise. And also the government is prepared to use no noise surfacing materials. So is there the need to build extra noise barriers then? Ms. Ho. 2 questions from you. So Mr. Wu could help answer the question on the noise barriers. And your suggestion that some facilities that are not so urgent, can they be actually put at the bottom of the priority list? Well, let me try to explain. In the first half of this year, even if we are to start the second phase work, I think the whole area won't be ready until several years later. And when we build the stadium, or the sports ground. We have, in our planning for that, we have talked to district council and sports associations, and they very much anticipate the completion of the stadium, because in Chung, people often have the view that some recreational facilities are adequate, particularly as more and more like this share in the reclaimed area. There is public housing estates built, and people would start to move into those estates, and there'll be more young people living there. So we need to provide the necessary facilities. As I said just now, the stadium being planned for Tung actually is one that is very special, and it can meet the need of people living in outlying islands. So we suggest that in the phase 2 works, this stadium should be built at the same time. As I said, even in the first half of this year, when the works begins, all the facilities won't be ready till a few years later for public enjoyment. So I'd like to ask Mr. Wu to talk about the noise barriers.
即係頭先
Well, we already covered the point that more data and information we provided after the meeting concerning the skate park and our related facilities. In 2025, we will see population intake in eastern part of Tung. Altogether, there will be 30,000. And if we look at East Tung, at the end of the day, there will be 150,000 people. So traffic noise will go up. Of course, we need to do the EIA, and the detailed EIA will consider the need for noise barriers. So we need to cover some gaps. You can see that we don't provide noise barriers for the entire stretch of the road there. And we also consider using low noise paving material, which is cheaper. So we believe some for the noise barriers will be needed at this point. That's why we cover this in the proposed project. Mr. Andrew Lam, you have 3 minutes. I would like to get additional information on the ecology works at the lower stretch of the river, Tung River. These are ecologically sensitive because of the rare fish species. At the river mouth, it's more sensitive. Many people are very concerned about the rehabilitation of the habitat for seahorses. We have to understand that it's an ecologically sensitive site. It's not just providing a very visually pleasing attraction. I hope more information can be provided. Ms. Ho, let's see if Ms. Wu has got information to share here. Mr. Wu, first of all, we are not talking about the upper stretch of the river, not at the river mouth. We don't have any construction for the river itself, but at the river bank on location next to the river, there will be projects, as I've said. We'd like to see a park there to be enjoyed by the public. During the construction, we'll do all the prevention measures required. We'll provide the information after the meeting. We'll provide more information, and we'll be contacting Mr. Lam after the meeting. It's the lower stretch of Tung River, actually. I talk about a number of fishes. You know, this very controversial. You have EPD officials here. Even if you have seaweeds planted, some people will be very concerned. So perhaps you can give us more information. Yes, also give us more information on your consideration of the case. For the stage 1, we revitalize one section of Tung River. A section of Tung River was turned into concrete at some point. And now we want to see rocks, boulders, and also the green bodies have a lot of views to offer on how to convert or reconvert the channels. If members have no further questions, I now put this item to the vote. For those in favor of PWSC bracket 2024-25, number 21, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands. I think the majority of members are in favor of this item. The item is approved. As for whether we would propose to the Finance Committee that there should be further discussion of PWSC 2024-25, number 21. As regards whether FC should have further discussion of this item, I would like to put this item to the vote in accordance to Rule 41 of the FC procedure. This subcommittee proposed that the FC should further discuss the proposal in paper PWSC 2024-25, number 21. If this is passed, that means that the FC will have further discussion of the proposal. If this is negative, then it means that the FC should not have further discussion of the item. Please, for those in favor, please raise your hands. Those against? I think the majority of members are against the motion. The motion is negative. The subcommittee, the PWSC, does not recommend to the FC that the FC should further discuss the proposal in PWSC 2024-25, number 21. I'll ask the administration to submit the additional information requested to members as soon as possible. The discussion of this item ends here. I thank all the officials for their attendance. Actually, on the agenda, we have 3 funding proposals. We just completed one of them. For the other 2, we are going to discuss them at the next meeting. That will be on Friday, 21st of February. We would the meeting time would be from 8:30 to 10:45 in the morning. That's an additional meeting scheduled for this subcommittee. Thank you all for your attendance. Meeting's adjourned.